a live broadcasting as Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouly is attending Doha Forum.
Because words is not enough, and pretending that is not enough. It's the time now to seriously principles that being advocated action to implement it on the ground, which has resulted in a lot of negative spillover that is now affecting.
Well, let me take this, because I know that we're doing this panel a little different, and I want to encourage you all to respond to each other. We lost cooperation, or how we lost a smoothness in global affairs. If you think well, we were all going to kind of evolve to be the same, that we had a lot of connectivity, and you thought about the movement of people and ideas and money and institutions was supposed to move more frictionlessly in a higher and higher trust world. It seems to me, and we have a lot of people in the business in this audience, we have a ton of connectivity in the world, but we have a lot of fear. It's a high fear globalization where walls are coming back up. So, Madam President, you may be in Bosnia and Herzegovina one of the few places, I don't know why you ever leave the country, because you have global affairs at home. You have 3 peoples and 2 nations to work with constantly in your space. And I'd love to just kind of get some insights from you about what the rest of the world can learn from how you're holding together one of the tensest and most complicated governments in the world.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, of course. Speaking about Bosnia, it is composed of 2 entities and 3 constituent peoples, and it by itself actually speaks a lot, and we should know that it is complicated to reach agreement, to reach consensus, you know, but at the same time it's a good practice, I would say, for all of us. And I would say that others could learn a lot. Although I would be honest to say that it's very difficult to reach consensus on many important issues. The fact that I come from the presidency, which is tripartite presidency, composed of 3 members who act on equal terms, and now I'm kind of chairperson, you know, for the 8 months, and we have this rotation on 8 months basis.
Also, so this is your last month in 8 months?
So this is my second, like, you know, 8 months, because I have 2 more years, like, you know, in the presidency. But, you know, that shows actually that the country is fragmented, you know, otherwise we would have 1 president, you know. So we have 3 presidents, 3 members of the presidency, which means that it's necessary actually to make agreements, and it's necessary to have constant dialogue. This is something like, you know, which is not going always very smoothly, but, you know, this is something which gives us a lot of practice and a lot of opportunities to practice how to reach agreement and how to put things through dialogue instead of forcing, like, you know, one or the other side. So this could be a good example, maybe, to showing that, you know, it's possible to function that way. But at the same time, I understand that there are a lot of challenges worldwide nowadays, like, you know, but the world has always been fragmented, if you want to be honest. It's not only this, like, you know, unique situation nowadays. Now we can see that more visibly. It's more visible now because of the, like, you know, social media and other things, but also because of the discussions worldwide, which is something, you know, that we can have on a daily basis as a kind of common news, you know. But, you know, the world has always been fragmented. Now the question is whether those instruments that would help overcome fragmentation are still in place, or whether we need to recover some of these instruments. For instance, if we speak about global organization, that is UN, does it function in the proper way actually to, you know, take up all these challenges? We speak about adherence to the international law. So who are those who disrespect, you know, international law? Now we should know who they are, and actually to see what the cases are, what examples are. If we speak that it's necessary to have dialogue, who are those who do not want to participate in any dialogue, you know? If we speak about elimination of the double standards policy, then we should speak, you know, and say, or ask ourselves, who are those who promote double standards policy, you know? So now the question is actually how open we are in addressing these issues, and not to turn a blind eye and say, like, okay, there is something happening and we will see what we are going to do tomorrow. No, we need to tackle these issues nowadays. But as I said, like, I think that they are more visible today than they used to be before. But, coming from a complex country, I understand actually how difficult it is to put things through a dialogue, how difficult it is to navigate the situation, which is kind of having a lot of burdens and things like that. But if there is dialogue, if there is goodwill, if there is adherence to the international law, then okay. And my country is based, and its existence is based on international law, which is the Dayton Accords.
It sounds like you live in a world of a lot of litigation, and that's a nightmare to me, but I'm glad you're doing well in it. I want to jump to, in a moment, to President Abinader, but before I get there, one of the other, I think, underlying assumptions of this conference, of this forum, this magnificent forum around innovation, is there's a kind of a notion that we can be proactive in tackling some of these big transnational problems and challenges out there. And I really appreciate the Prime Minister's realism here that it's very tough. But I'm just wondering whether or not, as in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we need a few big crises out there to remind the world of how much cooperation is needed in climate or migration or other form, AI or disasters. But let me jump to President Abinader, as I'm just, you probably have the easiest of the governances here. So let me make it tough. But if you're going to guide the rest of the world in thinking about things like climate, or the fact that if you talk to the UN Commission for High Commission for Refugees, the most displaced people ever in world history is encountered. You begin looking at these problems of climate or concerns about geopolitical tensions. What's going to tame the system to kind of move in a better track? Because if you look over the last 20 years, we're not succeeding very well.
When you ask your first question, Steve, about how should be the name of this forum, I would say we should be optimistic. Because, as the President was saying, there all the time in history has been differences. But there has been always a leader during that time that could unify it all. And it's a cliche, but we have to say that this again. We have to work with the things that unite and not at the thing that difference and that not unite us. And this is not that difficult. I think that also to try to get into an arrangement, we have to work, we have to be prepared for that. Internally in our countries or externally when we deal with another country. And also we have to remind the leaders that what our people want, what our country want, are efficient leaders. Leaders that can develop, that they can have more on their table, that they can have, their families can live better, that they can develop and the country can grow. And for that, you have to cooperate. You have to do cooperation internally, you have to do cooperation externally. And I know it's not that easy, but you have to insist, you have to have a plan, you have to prepare, but you also have to know the objective of the order that you are setting. If the objective of the orders are X, you cannot do Y.
Does that work in a world where the biggest topographical change in the world is rising strident nationalism, and I would use my own country in that case, pugnacious nationalism, make America great again? Does that system work in a world where not only the United States but many other countries are kind of going deeper into a deeper nationalism? Does cooperation still flourish?
I think yes, because you have to explain what has made America a great country. It has been the cooperation. It has been also even the migration.
Have you talked to Donald Trump lately and told him that?
I will talk to him. But
you will talk?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think there is a way to do it. I think there is a way to that you can understand. It's not easy. It's not something that will come from one day to the other. But I think that we have to insist. There is no other way. There is no other way to try. But also we have to make the interpretation of what you really want or how you want to get there. And also it's the narrative. The narrative, what people are on this is a new world with the social media. And everybody goes and without any filter goes and says what they want or what they feel. And sometimes what the people see on the social media is not really the feeling of what people are or what is the majority want. But this is the feeling what the ones that are most active are saying or what are promoting on the social media. We have to insist. I think there are much more things that tie us together than what divide us. I think that the world, when it has come together, when it has cooperated, is when you see more growth, economic growth, when you see that the living standard goes high.
Right.
And that's the history. And I think also you have to remind that to the people, to all the people in the United States, in China, in Russia, in Europe, in Latin America, all over the world.
Right.
I think you have to insist, and you have to also to have a more positive information and narrative on the social media and on the communication in general.
So, Ms. Franco, let me come back to you and your neighborhood, which is such a complicated one. And you were appointed Prime Minister by President Sisi in 2018. So in the 6 years that you've been there, wow, what a period of time you kind of looked at. You've sort of seen, of course, the aftermath of October 7th and the Hamas attack against Israel, and the response since, and the nightmare, in my view, that is happening in Gaza as we watch on our cell phones and whatnot. And we've seen now Lebanon shaken, Syria fall. Egypt has been very clear that if refugees end up over the line, that this would drive a potential military response from you. So I'm just interested in how you come back to any semblance or what you think is required in this. And I want you to tell me who the white hats and the black hats are. Who are the villains right now that are impeding greater cooperation within your neighborhood? Tell me which ones you like. Which leaders do you like in your neighborhood? And which don't you like?
No. It's not, I think, it's about leadership. It's about what is the root causes for what is happening in our region. Let's confess and let's admit. It's the non-implementation of the two-state solution. You cannot anticipate a region with this historical crisis of that a Palestinian is lacking their right to have their own states.
Was that a U.S. failure?
I think it's the world failure. It's not only the United States failure. It's the whole global system that has failed to implement these basic rights for this country, the Palestinian. Because here, this is what I think what Her Excellency was mentioning. Here it's a very clear manifestation of double standards in our region, that there is very clear case and nobody is serious about solving this problem, and imagine that its spillover will always be away from affecting them. But let's admit, with what is happening, everybody will be affected. Europe, United States, and even Asia, everybody will be affected with this. If it is not now, it will happen afterwards. If you are speaking now about the problem of refugees, because the turbulence that has taken place in the region, let's see what's taking place now in Europe. And why now a lot of right-wing parties are winning elections in Europe, and they are resisting the whole principle of absorbing and living with others, and now they are against migration and all the problem and turbulence that's taking place because of migrants who came mainly from this region. Again, the root causes of all of this happening is this case, mainly this case, the Palestinian case, and how it has affected the whole region. We have to see what's happening now, as you mentioned.
I want to get
Lebanon, Syria, and others.
For sure. More on other perspectives on this, but I want to ask you, in short form, do you believe Israel is engaged in genocide against Palestinians in Gaza?
I think what has happened in Gaza, it was really something that everybody knows very well. It is not defending yourself against terrorism. It's a sort of collective punishment of innocent people and civilians because an act of a group, Hamas group, and because of this, now we have more than 45,000 killed, with more than 110,000 injured and lost their life. How do you describe this? I'm just asking you. This is what something that we have to see how. This is something I think that everybody has described it, that this is not something justice or fair or whatever. But what is the action of the world against this?
Let me ask you both, Madam President, as you look at these crises, and we're now beginning to see the interconnectedness of them, Russia and Ukraine. You met, as I understand it, Foreign Minister Lavrov here and thanked Russia for its role in your constitution and others, but Russia is a complicated entity for many nations in the world and is looked at as one of the significant destabilizers of a sovereign government. We see the Israel-Gaza crisis going on, which is happening, and atrocities that we're seeing there. I'm just interested, for those that may not be on the edge, Egypt is clearly on the edge of this, but not on the edge, what is the global collective responsibility at this moment, particularly if the big powers are not doing anything to really bring these to a close? Madam President?
It's necessary to restore diplomacy as the only tool and the only means to reach agreements. Of course, it's easy to say that, but it's difficult to implement it in practice. You know why? Because obviously there are those who think that the recipe is to have militarization of international relations instead of having clear dialogue, goodwill and, attempt, or at least goodwill to reach final agreement. That's why actually we live in a messy world. I said that we have always, the world has always been fragmented, but now it's more visible, and now something which is called rules is not something which is applied to all, and that's the main problem. And when we speak about double standards policy, it is something that affects us all. It's not only in your region, it's also in my region, it's also in my country. I have seen so many examples where, for instance, you have double standards. Something is possible for the one, and it's not possible for the other one. So you can see these examples worldwide, so it's not kind of a unique case that we speak about Middle East or whatever, the region, But when I say that we need to restore diplomacy, it means that all of us want to have kind of credible international organization which can really deal with all these problems. If it is only a battlefield where we are going to have different political ideas and clashes, then there's no real purpose for that. But if it is a place where we should actually promote, and all of us trying to put in place something which is equal practice everywhere, then it will be okay. I understand that this is not kind of, the world where small countries can be equal with big countries or big players. It is quite clear. But at least, if we pretend that there is a place which unites us, which puts us together to discuss these issues, then we should give some more, honor or some more credibility to that institution, and all of us should be included in that. And yes, yesterday I attended a panel, and it was basically an interview by Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs, and I've known him for many years, so I wanted to hear actually his perspectives on many of these issues. And finally, about the title, about the one which you titled here in this panel, and I would prefer to stick to this title. It's okay.
I know, I asked you.
And also when you mentioned this, Amalgamate America Great Again, in the way you mentioned it, I would say that actually I have nothing against Make America Great Again. If it is really great and strong internally, and if it is fair and just externally, this is something which we advocate in my region, and to be honest, I have no problems with this. I promote a concept where we should build strong nations so that these strong nations can build strong relations with other nations, But if it is something that you are going to build your country to the detriment of others, this is something I do not advocate. But you come from a big country, I have from a complicated country, which has three member presidency, so which by itself speaks about how difficult it is sometimes to navigate, all these problems and reach good solutions. But we shouldn't give up trying, and we shouldn't give up looking for something which would be stable environment and stable solution.
Well, what I love about this panel is when you think there are 190 nations in the world, not everyone is a Brazil or an India or a United States or a China, but there's still voice, there's still action, there's still conscience, there's still spotlight. And one of my favorite countries, Mr. President, is your country, the Dominican Republic. I loved it. I was telling you when I was last there. And you're kind of an oasis of stability and sanity in my perspective there. But you've got Haiti right next door, very, very close, of course, and a kind of a gang-infested security situation there. You have Cuba imploding your neighborhood. But I know largely the DR is in pretty good shape. But when we talk about Ukraine-Russia, or you see, like at the beginning of the Doha Forum, 6 injured journalists who came here, from injured, doing their job in Gaza, doing their job in Lebanon. We're talking about Sergei Lavrov in Russia, Ukraine. As you're sitting in the Dominican Republic, can you just say, hey, that's the rest of the world's problem? How do you look at those? Do your people feel connected to the global crises that are going on at all?
Let me tell you a story about Ukraine and Russia. When the war started in February 22, one of the last planes that came to Kiev was from Punta Cana. Tourists from Ukraine going to the Dominican Republic. We had 40,000 tourists from Russia and 8,000 tourists from Ukraine per month.
Wow.
That far away from the Dominican Republic. So everything affects us. Yes, we are, as you said, we are growing. We are the fastest growing economy in Latin America at 5%, except Guyana, our friend, because of the situation of the hydrocarbons and the discovery. So we have inflation under control. We have tourism. We are going to receive now this year more than 11 million visitors. This the end of 2024. Just passing Mexico in Latin America. Just
how many from Qatar?
Excuse me?
How many from Qatar?
From
Qatar?
From Qatar. No, there are not many, but there are going to be a lot.
Okay.
When we have direct flights from Qatar Airways, soon enough. And
is that you announcing that? Is that
no. I am trying to do that. That's my wish. That's my wish. But here in
Qatar, Qatar Airways may be here, so he can see you after in the back.
He's hearing me.
Okay.
Yeah, he knows that. And we will do it. But and the tourism is growing. We have industrial, the free zones are also growing. We have exports. Our exports are at record levels in every way. Every cigar that you have here is from Dominican Republic, the best cigars in the world. And we have a very diversified economy. And
yes, you also get a lot of hurricanes there and climate change.
Some hurricanes, some hurricanes. But not when you are on vacation. When you're on vacation, they don't go. So we are doing well. But we care about Haiti. We care about Haiti. And we call the international community also to help. In 2021, on the United Nations speech, I said that we were seeing Haiti, after the assassination of President Moïse, going into the Somalicization of Haiti because of the gangs divided by areas. And we call a lot about the international community. Finally, Kenya gave its help, but we still need more help from the international community. So you have more police from Kenya to control the situation. You have to control and to get peace into Haiti, and later on to have a development plan for Haiti. They can have election, and they can flourish a democracy, and also that could help for their development.
Do you think the UN deserves praise or criticism? We have somebody big from the UN coming up in a minute, so do you want to send a message?
I think that the international community and the friends of Haiti, that they know who they are, should be more aligned to help Haiti. We have approximately 40% of our maternity beds are occupied by Haitians, 16% of all our health system, and around 12% of our school system. So we are doing a lot for that. And also a lot of Haitians are working in the DR. But we need the international community to help Haiti. Is not really that Haiti is in that situation, just 1 hour and 45 minutes from Florida. I think that should be taken into consideration, especially from the human point of view. All these children who have been affected by the war, the woman, all the assassination, and all what these gangs are doing to innocent Haitians, boys and girls and citizens. So that's something that I have been very vocal in the last 3 years, and we will continue to be.
Right. Mr. Prime Minister, I remember the Doha Forum when the Arab Spring had started and was well underway, and we had meetings and we saw, and Egypt was such a center of that. And I want to remind people that one of the big concerns, and I have my own friendly criticisms of President Sisi and authoritarian governments, I have that, but at the same time, the bigger worry people had is, wow, Egypt's economy, if it's not growing, if it's not dynamic, is going to become a source of instability. And I just want to give you an opportunity, because I sort of unfairly came at you early on the foreign policy issues, but your job has really been to liberalize, to help open up, to revitalize the Egyptian economy. And my sense is you've made progress that people were surprised by. How is that going?
Of course, Egypt has been able since 2014 to adapt, I can say, revolutionary and radical reform measures in our economy, and the whole principles of really how to boost the growth of your economy, availing more and more the private sector to contribute to the overall investment and developing, encouraging FDIs to come and step in your country. But to really apply this, we have to make for us really radical decision in reforming the subsidy, the long legacy of subsidies that has been embedded in our country, to make radical changes in our laws and regulation and institutional setup, and of course make the whole investment climate conducive to a private sector. But here you are working in not business as usual environment. You are working in a very turbulent and unstable circumstances. You cannot now predict, any politicians now cannot predict what will happen next month. Not going to say for years. I'm speaking about the coming few months, not even few months, weeks, as what we have witnessed within the last week, for example, in Syria and the other countries. So it's not that easy to really implement all the reforms with this turbulence.
I will give you, but let me ask you a question about this.
Okay.
Does the military is such a huge part of the Egyptian economy, and as you're liberalizing, beginning to figure out how you're liberalizing capital markets, is a measure of your success going to be shrinking that footprint of the military economy inside Egypt?
Okay, it's not that large as it has been perceived or anticipated. But even
So you've
now,
already succeeded?
Yes, and we are succeeding. And let me tell you something. We have already announced what we call state ownership policy since less than 2 years. And since that date, we started to apply it in how the state is exiting from a lot of economic activities and how it is promoting the private sector, economic sectors, and have what we can call it fair competitiveness. what has contributed that Egypt till this moment, with all the turbulence that we are having, is surviving. And the country now, if you were speaking about unemployment, it's 6.5%. 10 years ago, let me tell you something, within this 10 years, new inhabitants. So you can imagine the challenge that this country is now facing with really trying to boost the economy, availing jobs for, on annual basis, we are receiving 1 million newcomers to the employment market. It's almost could be a mission impossible, but even though the country has been able to provide all of these jobs and boosting the economy, I will end up with some comment. Believe a country that all its borders from all the directions look at the second tier and what is happening. But
well, you know, I was talking to Amr Musa, who's out here in the audience, I think somewhere, and Amr Musa is never but he said very nice things about your economic work. I just wanted to tell you, so I really value Amr Musa's perspective. But let me come back to Madam President and sort of ask another question about the global system. I'm fascinated by certain countries. Egypt can be one, but it became stuck in a vice for a while that is working out of. Some nations make their own weather, and some become victims of weather made by other countries. And I'm interested as you see, some of the evolution of the BRICS, for instance. There's been a lot of discussion about China, Russia, and a response and alternative to a transatlantic dominated global economy system. I'm just interested in whether you think it's necessary, from your perspective, that alternatives to a global financial order right now dominated by the United States and Europe needs to be challenged in some part, and whether that would be healthy or unhealthy from your perspective.
It doesn't necessarily mean that we need to look for alternatives. I'm very happy that we are going to have opportunity to hear from someone who is a UN top official to tell us actually what the UN is going to do in the future times, and we are all interested in that. And when I criticize, some of the practices within the UN, it is with the intention actually to say that it is necessary to improve to be alternative or not. Cannot actually give proper answer to that. Obviously, there are changes in the law. Obviously, and there are a lot of security threats and a lot. The world is changing. It's not something that we learn from the books. It is something which happens in end up this process. Transition to. But when I say that, actually there should be more of many of these issues that we mentioned here. For instance, every conflict, be it like situation in terms mandate an agreement which is actually basis for functional Bosnia-Herzegovina. Or whenever we have the attempts to twist it, to interpret that instead of implement that, we always have problems. Bosnia acts as a apart from Dayton agreement, our population in Bosnia-Herzegovina, who actually claims for himself to have the right to impose pieces of legislation, we have our parliament, so our parliaments are those who are entitled to pass laws. And what is the as the UN Security Council actually 2 or 3 times to say that it is not normal that you have kind of parliamentary system, that you have democracy, and that you have a person who is there based on Dayton Agreement, but what that person can do. That person acts beyond.
Be better.
So you just said situation that we are dealing now. No. And then in consequences, people are taking sides. So that we do not have to take sides. And this is my approach, and I think that the UN should be revitalized. If it wants to have proper role in the future, it needs to become completely different form, with a lot of credibility and a lot of activity that is going to yield some results. Otherwise, we will be stuck. Like today, we are stuck. We are stuck. Definitely it is the case. When we speak about double standards, this is also something which holds good for my country.
Right.
I can see so many examples where something is required for my country, but it is not required for others.
Right.
Something is forbidden to us and it is allowed to others. So we need to kind of harmonize these practices.
So in your gut, Madam President, is it going the right direction or is it getting worse? Because the reason I asked about the BRICS question, but I love the fact you're talking about the UN, is you in this forum, if you talk to people on the sidelines, you see institutional anguish.
But I think that it's important to have, so I appreciate every forum where people can discuss economy and security.
Yeah.
Whatever the name of that forum and whatever the number of states and the name of the states that are gathered together within such fora.
Right.
So I appreciate that because my understanding is, maybe naive, but not that naive, that it also gives you opportunity to think what to do security-wise and economy-wise. Whether you are going to compete with someone else is completely different thing, but they are competing, in many aspects different.
President Aminader, I would love to ask you a similar kind of question about institutions and whether they're up to the task. So as we're thinking about this tension between cooperation and a fragmenting world, coming back to that meta-theme of innovation, right? It sounds good, but it's awfully hard sometimes. I'm just interested in your perspective as a major stakeholder in these institutions. Do we need to go back to the drawing board on a number of them? Do we need to revise them? Do we need to improve the UN? Do we need to either shelve the BRICS or applaud the BRICS? Your view.
I will come to a question. Is this the same world as it was 20 years ago?
I don't think so.
Is it the same world as it was 4 years ago? So we have the same institution. So we have to update this institution to this new world. And that's really, as we have to update any organization or any institution. We have to update that on the Organization of American States in America. We have to update also the United Nations in every way. It's a different world. In some parts, it's a complete different world. So we have to update our organizations. That I think that's what it has to be done soon. And if we do it as soon as and as quick as we do it, we will maybe we can prevent conflicts, we can prevent war. But we have to adapt these organizations to this new world.
How would you do it? What would be the Dominican Republic plan?
We don't have the power, Steve, to change this organization.
You may not see it, but I was talking, I name drop now and then, it's a Washington thing, but I was talking to Carlos Gutierrez, a former Commerce Secretary, and Carla Hills, a former U.S. Trade Representative from the Reagan days and Bush days, and I told them I was at the Doha Forum, and they both said, wow, the Doha round of trade and the WTO, and they both talked to me about how important Doha was ages ago as a platform for building very key international economic platform. And so it's interesting sometimes that a small nation can have a huge impact far beyond its weight.
No, and we will try to do it. We will speak about that. We have been speaking about that this institution adapt to the new world and adapt to the new conflicts, adapt to the new situations that we have. We will continue to do it. We will continue to try to press on that direction. We have we are in the middle of ideologies in our region. Not to the right, not to the left. We are at the center, and then we can also approach and we can go to every side in order to try to all advance. And we have done that, and we will continue to do it.
Before I jump to the Prime Minister again, I was not only joking about hurricanes, I was using them as a metaphor that many people have about worry about climate change. So again, when you come back to this question of fragmentation and needing common purpose to deal with these issues, one would think you're doing it. I worry that intensity of purpose is falling apart. And I'm wondering what a hotter world that's not serious about climate change does to your part of the world.
Yes, but when we speak about climate change, there is very few I can do to stop the climate change. But there is a lot I have to do to prevent from climate change, because we are the one that the island states is the one has been more affected. And we have been working on that. We have been trying to prevent any more suffering from what we have been seeing on the climate.
Right.
You see that in 2 days there is more rains than it was supposed to be in 6 months. And we are having that now. It's not if it's going to change to calm the climate.
So are you worried about less intensive collective action?
Less intensive?
Less intensive global cooperation.
I think everybody's talking about climate change. But I don't know if all that speaking comes into action. Right. One of the things that the developed world has not get the amount of money that is needed to really apply to climate change. And not even some countries are willing to regulate their industry to affect climate change.
Right. Mr. Prime Minister, I'd love to get your quick thoughts, both of you. We've got about 2.5 minutes left, a minute each, on this climate question. And you look at the 30 least resource countries in the world, and they're not having capital inflows. They're having capital outflows from those countries. There's no way they can invest in this issue. And as a leader, as someone who knows intimately so much of the leadership in those countries, should we have our hair on fire? Should we be really angry and upset about what's happening, about the inequities in climate, and should, as opposed to saying, hey, let's call for cooperation, let's call for immediate action?
Yes, you are totally right, Steve. Let me just give you a number. Egypt is part from Africa, the African continent, and the whole African continent, its contribution to global warming is less than 3%. Less than 3%. But now, with all the commitments that it is being now put on all the countries, Africa need at least 2.5 to 3 trillion US dollars to adapt to the measures and the objective of 1.5 degree less. From where they are going to get all of this money to finance this needed and urgent projects to contribute to the climate finance? I will give you this number. We have been listening to the idea that the developed world will commit with 100 billion US dollars annually to contribute to this climate change things. Nothing serious has been implemented.
Absolutely.
And even the last COP in Azerbaijan, they started to revisit the whole target to see how it will be applicable and try to force the developing countries to seek their own resources to contribute. This is totally unfair.
Right.
And without a very clear concessional finance to such kind of countries, nobody will be able to finance such kind of boards.
Madam President, I'm going to give you the last minute and last word.
It's one of the issues, definitely, a need international intervention or international solidarity actually to deal with the issues, but international action also when it comes to climate change. But as you said also, it requires finances, and these finances cannot be obtained individually within one country. So, okay, as I said, some of these global issues and things and organizations, this is something which require kind of to underway serious reform in order to be able to give proper answers to all these challenges.
Right.
And let me at the very end thank our host, Qatar, for the great opportunity to be here and also for this Doha Forum. I think this is also a very good tool actually to send the message across and to show actually what we think about so many important issues. Thank you once again.
Well, thank you. And I want to say, when they said, Steve, hey, would you like to have a conversation with the heads of the government of Dominican Republic, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and Egypt? I said, wow, fascinating, once-in-a-lifetime experience to get 3 incredible countries from 3 different zones in the world to talk in real terms about the fragmentation that's going on, and not to be gauzy-eyed about cooperation, but to talk about it in pragmatic, tactical terms. And I think there could have been no better final panel, in my view, than the one we had, hearing from real governments struggling with real issues. So please give a round of applause to His Excellency Luis Abinader, President of the Dominican Republic, Her Excellency Zelska Zijanovic, Chair of the Presidency of Bosnia-Herzegovina, and Mustafa Madbouly, Prime Minister, Republic of Egypt. Thank you all so much for your candor and creativity. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, for moderating this final session of the Doha Forum and making it as interesting as we all anticipated. Thank you as well to President Abinader, President Zijanovic, and Prime Minister Madbouly. A fascinating insight into very different countries and regions, each trying to navigate through their own dynamics and changes, but all with a common interest in creating a more robust but democratic and effective global system that isn't stuck in the power structures of the past, one that is forward-looking and innovative. Now, for years, if not decades, there have been calls for United Nations reform. But the big question is, and has been for a long time, can the one organization that purports to represent us all live up to that ideal? Can it ever break free from the shackles of the past, its structures, but also its mechanisms that were designed to represent the world as it was back in 1945, not as it is today in 2024? In a nutshell, is the United Nations beyond repair, to put it bluntly, or can it still change as it inches closer to 80? Can we reinvent the UN, or must we continue to accept it with all of its flaws and inequalities? It is my distinct pleasure now to welcome to the stage once more His Excellency Philemon Young, President of the 79th United Nations General Assembly, to deliver his final remarks at this Doha Forum and perhaps give us a glimpse into his vision of a re-energized, more equitable global system and United Nations.
Good afternoon. I have on different occasions talked about the reforms at the UN, and the reforms concern the UN Security Council. They also concern the General Assembly. They concern the whole system, but I think we will have another opportunity to deal with that. But I am here to say a few words at the closing of this forum. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I congratulate the government of the state of Qatar for another successful session of the Doha Forum. Many times I've heard about this forum. I have seen it once, and a wise person has said that instead of hearing about an event 1,000 times, it is good to see it once. It is more realistic. So I've had an opportunity to see what happens at this forum. Your presence and commitment to the issues being discussed have helped cement the Doha Forum's position as a preeminent space for dialogue, diplomacy, and knowledge sharing. And we've seen a lot of knowledge sharing here. It is a space all the more important in light of the geopolitical tensions, conflict, growing inequalities, and erosion of trust in the multilateral system. It is also a space that will be of immense value as we chart a path ahead, guided by the Pact for the Future, which we adopted recently at the UN. Excellencies, as we close the Doha Forum, I am encouraged by what I have seen and heard here. While we are confronted daily by catastrophic and existential threats, the will and desire to affect positive change remains vibrant. And it has been seen here every time people have discussed. I saw this myself in New York in September when member states adopted the Pact for the Future. Despite our many differences, we fundamentally agree that we simply cannot go it alone. We need each other all the time in order to succeed. That's what the Pact for the Future signifies, and it shows us the way forward. Indeed, international cooperation remains the only path to addressing common challenges, promoting peace, protecting human rights, and ensuring sustainable and equitable social development for everyone, everywhere. Going forward, it is imperative that we honor our commitment to international cooperation rooted in the respect for international law, with trust and solidarity as the fundamental bedrock upon which our efforts must be built. Excellencies, we sincerely thank the government and people of the state of Qatar for their generosity and welcoming spirit. And let me commend their efforts, not only in convening this forum, but in the unwavering efforts to bring hope and opportunity to this region and the wider international community. Let us not forget, it was Qatar that requested the opening of the General Assembly's 10th Emergency Special Session in 1997, pursuant to the Uniting for Peace Resolution of 1950. And it is Qatar, since October 2023, that has played a profound yet delicate role in negotiations to bring about peace in Gaza. I commend Qatar on its long track record of diplomacy, dialogue, and diversity, and thank His Highness the Emir Al-Thani once again for convening this important forum. I thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, President of the General Assembly, President Young, for delivering these remarks. We will leave the more thorny issues of UN reform for another day, as you say. It is now my distinct honor to invite to the stage our final speaker, the host of this forum, to formally close the 2024 Doha Forum. Please welcome Dr. Mohammed bin Abdulaziz Al Khulaifi, Minister of State at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the State of Qatar.
Good afternoon, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to address you as we conclude the 2024 Doha Forum. And I will not miss to thank His Excellency the President of the United Nations General Assembly for his fruitful speech and kind words. over the past days, we explored the innovation imperative with shared conviction. Innovation is essential for resolving the pressing challenges of our time. This forum has reaffirmed its role as a platform for a bold thinking and a collective actions, reminding us that the future belongs to those who dare to think differently. Innovation is not just about technology. It is a mindset. It requires creativity, adaptability, and courage to challenge the status quo. From diplomacy to development, from the conflict resolution to humanitarian efforts, innovation must guide our approach to build a stable world. This year's forum has demonstrated how fresh perspectives and collaboration can transform even the most complex crises into opportunities. An effective mediation requires wisdom, flexibility, and a vision to find a common ground. Qatar's experience has shown us that every conflict holds a potential possibility for resolution. Dear guests, mediation comes from our traditional roots and principles of justice and fairness, which have been the foundation for Qatar's foreign policies for many years. This based on Article 7 of Qatar's Constitution that integrates conflict resolution and peace-building efforts, which considered as the core foundation for Qatar's foreign strategy. Mediation transforms conflict into opportunities by turning barriers into bridges and discord into dialogue. It is the foundation for a sustainable peace. Ladies and gentlemen, this forum has reminded us that the real progress comes from turning ideas into actions and responding to immediate crisis while building for a long-lasting peace. And last but not least, we extend our deepest respect for the esteemed journalists honored yesterday by His Highness, the Emir, and others whose unwavering commitments to truth and fearless storytelling continues to inspire all of us and uphold the highest commitments to journalism. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Al-Khulaifi, and thank you to our hosts, the State of Qatar, and to the Doha Forum for once again hosting us here and bringing us all together in the spirit of dialogue, diplomacy, and diversity. Please mark your calendars for next year's forum, which will be December 6th and 7th. We now leave you until we meet again in the near future, hopefully next year, with this look back at some of the highlights of this forum.